You're watching The Legal Breakdown. So, Glenn, we finally got a judge here making history against Donald Trump. What happened in court today?
Donald Trump was gagged. We've spent all this time talking about how judges should consider imposing a narrowly tailored restriction on Donald Trump's speech and on his posts because he is forever, endangering witnesses, prosecutors, judges, jurors. And Judge Arthur Engoron, the New York State Court judge who's presiding over Donald Trump's fraud trial in New York, just issued what I would call a snap gag order. Donald Trump posted a picture of Judge Engoron's law clerk, a picture that was taken with Senator Chuck Schumer. And he posted that, oh, this is Chuck Schumer's girlfriend, mocking her, and then suggested it was a basis to have the case against him dismissed. Judge Engoron took the bench, I believe, after the lunch break today, and here is what he said. Quote, "Personal attacks on my members of my court staff are unacceptable, inappropriate, and I will not tolerate them under any circumstances." And he said, you should consider that a gag order. He added, there will be serious consequences if you violate or disobey this order. A dramatic moment, and Brian, let's hope this opens the floodgates for other judges to begin doing what the law allows, which is restricting Donald Trump's reckless, dangerous, false speech and posts designed to endanger witnesses and poison jury pools.
Okay, now that the markers have been laid here, what will happen if and when Donald Trump violates this gag order?
Let's go with when. And I suspect what Judge Engoron will do is his opening salvo for a violation will probably be a big fat fine, fining Donald Trump to try to bring him into compliance. But worst comes to worst, he can hold Donald Trump in contempt. He can impose sanctions for that contempt up to and including ordering him jailed for a period of time. But let's remember, this is the case that Attorney General Letitia James brought against Trump and Don Jr. and Eric for their long-term, rampant, horrific business fraud. But because it's a civil case and not a criminal case, I think a judge in that context is far less likely to order somebody imprisoned for defying a court order. But look, court orders are court orders, whether you're in civil litigation or criminal litigation. So, given how quickly and how definitively Judge Engoron reacted to this, this misstep by Donald Trump, he could very well order him jailed as a sanction for violating the order.
This might be way off base here, but is it possible that Donald Trump could incur some type of a criminal charge for putting somebody's life at risk inside of the courtroom or trying to intimidate a law clerk here, and that even though this is a civil trial, that the result of it could be a criminal charge in a separate legal proceeding?
Yeah, so let me say, in theory, the answer is yes. In practice, the answer is probably no. When I say in theory, if we kind of tweak the hypothetical a little bit, if Donald Trump said, here's a picture of Judge Engoron's law clerk, take care of her,
right,
mob speak for hurt her, I think that would be a chargeable threat. The fact that he posted something that mocked her and called her Chuck Schumer's girlfriend and said that, this serves as a basis to dismiss his case is probably not sort of sufficiently threatening language to support a criminal charge. But, the flip side of that coin, Brian, is when Donald Trump tells people things like, hey, your vote's been stolen, go to the Capitol and stop the steal. I think we all know he was inspiring and intending exactly what his supporters did that day,
right,
which was violently attack the Capitol. So, it would take a pretty forward-leaning prosecutor to think about criminal charges. But you know what? Give Donald Trump time because we're still early in the trial.
Right, exactly. I think that this judge deserves a lot of credit here for taking immediate action to protect his clerk. But what does it say about all of the other judges in all of the other cases who have kind of sat idly by and watched Trump violate the terms of his release and opted to do nothing?
That's a great question. Don't get me wrong by this criticism. It's not criticism of Judge Engoron, but let's think about this first gag order. Why was it imposed? Well, because a judge was so outraged by Donald Trump endangering one of his law clerks that he acted instantly. Well, how many others has Donald Trump endangered? Witnesses, jurors, prosecutors, and judges and their staff and their respective family members, and yet no other judge felt moved or inspired to issue a gag order. So I appreciate that Judge Engoron did this when it involves someone that he was very protective of. Seems to me we should be just as protective across the spectrum of all of the witnesses Donald Trump is putting in harm's way. Let me hasten to add, Brian, that after 30 years in courtrooms, I can tell you judges are very protective of their law clerks, as well they should be. You know, law clerks are often volunteer positions. They can be intern positions. They can be salaried employees, but, you know, they're kind of the unsung heroes of the court system, because if they are being paid, it ain't much. And they are researching things for judges. They're drafting opinions. They're corralling the parties and making sure that, you know, the proceedings come off smoothly and without a hitch. So I understand why Judge Engoron was inspired to act immediately. I just wish other judges would be inspired to act to protect all of the witnesses Donald Trump endangers.
Now, to that point of other judges, and this is building on what you had just alluded to previously, do you think that other judges will now be more likely to impose gag orders since kind of the first domino has fallen here?
I do. I think this is a floodgates moment. You know, just as I maintained for a very long time, too darn long, that once one brave prosecutor stepped up and indicted Trump, you would see the floodgates open and you would see multiple indictments. Well, that's exactly what we saw. I think the same may be true now that one judge has broken the glass ceiling of gagging a former president and current presidential candidate. Now, and what Judge Engoron did in issuing this gag order is well within the law. He was entitled to do it. I have a feeling other judges will feel not just emboldened to do it or a little bit more comfortable doing it. They may now feel like, you know, I had better issue some gag orders to protect the witnesses and the parties and others that Donald Trump is endangering in connection with the case that I'm presiding over. So I think there will be lots of appropriate pressure that will be felt by other judges to make sure they are also using the law, applying the tools available to them to protect witnesses and everybody else.
Glenn, in the aftermath of what was day 2 of this New York Attorney General trial regarding Donald Trump's fraud in his businesses, was there anything notable that stuck out at you?
You know, it was more testimony from the accountant and, you know, more recklessness by Donald Trump. But here's the other thing that definitely caught my attention. Donald Trump indicated a couple of times over, I will be testifying in this trial. Now, Brian, you know, I'm not a betting man. I wouldn't even bet the buck, my betting limit on Donald Trump testifying at this trial. But I think it's a good sign because he is so angered and so agitated by the sharply incriminating and damaging testimony that is unfolding in that New York courtroom that, you know, he has now proclaimed, I will testify, I will take the stand. Here's what's going to happen, I predict. As this trial wears on, Donald Trump will not testify because it would be a bloodbath for him if he did. And then here's what his lawyers will say at the end of the day to try to justify his flip-flop, you know, his decision not to testify. He'll say, well, you know, Letitia James and her attorneys failed to prove the case. And because they failed to prove the case, Donald Trump didn't even have to take the stand to try to rebut what was a losing case, a weak case. So we advised him he shouldn't testify. That will all be nonsense, of course, but that is how Donald Trump will try to weasel out of today's declaration that I will be taking the stand.
Yeah. With that said, this is also the same team of attorneys who stood idly by and watched this Donald Trump attack the very judge who would be unilaterally deciding how much he would pay in damages and deciding the remainder of the charges against him right outside of his courtroom, inside of the courthouse. So you're never going to lose money betting against the incompetence of Donald Trump's lawyers, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and these are also some of the same lawyers, 5 of them, that Judge Engoron sanctioned for their conduct during an earlier stage of the litigation in this case. They were each ordered to pay $7,500 in fines, in sanctions. So, they must be very proud of themselves.
Yeah, just a parade of terribles here, but you know what they say, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. So with that said, for anybody who wants to stay on top of this stuff as news continues to break in this trial here, make sure to subscribe. The links are right here on the screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.